Today on Aqua Kids.
Hey everyone. See the efforts being made by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to restore the oyster population in the Chesapeake Bay, plus oyster farming with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science.
Aqua Kids, doing what we have to do, saving our earth, land, air, and sea. All we gotta do is keep it green and blue, for me and you. Aqua Kids.
Hi, I'm Hannah Jones. Welcome to Aqua Kids. Hey Lily.
Hey Hannah, what's up?
Today is all about oysters.
I like to eat them, but why else would they be important?
Oysters are very important to our environment, and today we're going to learn why.
Okay, let's go find out some more. Okay, Hannah, so you told me to collect all these oyster shells from my neighbors. Now what?
Well, let's ask Carl. Hey Carl.
How you doing?
Doing well,
for
how are
the
you?
show. That's great.
So what do we do with them now?
Now you take the shells and put them on a recycling bin, and then later on we'll take them out and grow spat on them.
Spat? What's spat?
Spat is a baby oyster. We'll set it in the tank and then grow it on the shell and then seed it out and grow an oyster reef in the Chesapeake Bay.
So Carl, can anyone in the community bring their empty shells here for recycling?
Absolutely, it's open to the public. There's many recycling bins throughout the state of Maryland, and you can find where they're located on our website.
Okay, so we brought the shells. What are we gonna do with them?
Well, you take the shells in the bucket, dump it in the bin, and then later on we'll recycle all of them and grow baby spat on them.
Easy enough. Okay, Lily, let's recycle.
Okay, here we go.
Time to get mine.
Hey guys, thanks for your donation. Let's go over the bins.
Okay. So how many bushels are donated a year?
About 400 bushels, and then we use them for building a reef out in the Chesapeake Bay.
Oh.
And how long are those reefs?
They're about a half-acre
Oh
size.
my goodness, that's a lot of oyster shells.
Good for the environment.
Whoa! Looks like someone had a really big oyster feast over here.
I'll say. So Carl, are these all donations from the public?
Yes, the entire pile.
There's so many. Are these all individual donations?
Yes, this pile right here is from 2014, one over here from 2015.
So why do they sit in these big piles?
Well, we're going to collect them, and then during the summertime we set baby spat on it and build a reef.
Okay, back to that spat thing. What is it?
Spat is a little tiny oyster that swims around in the tank, then attaches itself to the shell. Once it's attached, that's its home for the rest of its life, and then it grows into big reefs out in the Chesapeake Bay, helping populate oysters and habitat for fishes.
And what is the length of time that these piles have to sit here?
You have to sit here all year to cure, and then we'll grow baby spat on it and put them out in the bay.
How many oyster shells do you guys try to collect over the year?
Ooh, that's a tough question. We try to collect as many as we can, usually about 400 bushels.
You mentioned they have to cure. What does that mean?
Well, there's organic material growing on it right now, and we want to make sure they're clean so we're not spreading diseases throughout the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay, Carl, I've got a big PVC pipe and some net. What are we doing?
We're filling it with shell.
Okay, let's start filling, Lily.
All right.
Here, you want to hold and I'll shovel?
Sure.
There you go, shove it from the bottom of the pile.
Bottom of the pile,
Fill the bag up.
and fill the bag up. And then where are these bags gonna go?
We're gonna go in our tanks to grow baby spat on top of all the shells.
So how many bags do you fill a year?
We fill about 700, enough for the oyster gardeners in the state of Maryland.
And so this becomes this,
Absolutely, yep.
and then they get dumped into the bay.
Yes, we can grow about 1,500 spat on that one bag alone.
On that one little bag.
One little bag.
It's a lot of
That's
spat.
a lot of oysters.
So why are we collecting shells and making reefs in the bay?
Because currently the Chesapeake Bay's oyster has been depleted down to 1% of its current population 300 years ago.
Are we doing that?
Yes, we are doing that. We're over harvesting, there's pollution coming down the rivers, and basically they have a tough life out there.
So here's what we've learned so far.
We collect the shells,
We bring them here to recycle them.
we put them in bags,
The bags go in the bay.
and then we make reefs that help the bay.
Stay tuned. Aqua Kids will be right back.
Now it's time for Aqua Quiz with your host, Drew Cruz.
I'm your host, Drew Cruz, and now it's time to test your knowledge with Aqua Quiz. The Chesapeake Bay was once known for its abundance of oysters. Oysters are filter feeders, consuming phytoplankton, or free-swimming algae, and improving water quality while they filter the food from the water. It's been estimated that oysters were once able to filter all the water in the Chesapeake Bay in about a week. With the sharp decrease in the number of oysters in the Chesapeake, how long does it take the current population of oysters to filter all the water? Is it A, 1 month, B, 3 months, C, 6 months, or D, 12 months? I'll have the answer after the break. Oysters on the half shell. Oh, do you know how long it takes the current oyster population to filter the entire Chesapeake Bay? The answer is D, 12 months. The decline in oysters is due to decades of overharvesting and habitat destruction. In recent years, 2 parasitic diseases have devastated the remaining oyster populations in most areas of the bay and its tributaries. I'll see you next week with another Aqua Quiz.
Welcome back to Aqua Kids. We're now joined by our Aqua Kids Club member, Maddie.
Hey, so what exactly is this tank?
Glad you asked. I'm not really sure. All I know is we bagged oyster shells before.
We did. Let's go to Carl so we can get some more answers. In fact, here comes Carl now.
Hi guys, how you doing? Thanks for coming out today.
Good. So what is this?
This is an oyster setting tank. This is where we grow little larvae oysters into spat oysters attached to the shell.
So how long did it take the baby's fat to grow?
About 10 days in this tank, and then we'll take them out and seed them onto an oyster bar and oyster reef in the Chesapeake Bay.
How many bags do you typically put in here?
This tank will hold about 700 bags.
Oh my, it's a lot.
How many babies are in this tank?
It's about 1 million after it's all said and done. That's quite a few.
Yeah.
So are there boy and girl oysters?
Well, they're actually male first hermaphroditic oysters.
Hermaphroditic? What's that?
Well, it's quite complicated. It's usually gender first, like male or female, and then they can switch throughout their life cycle.
How long did it take these baby oysters to become adults?
Well, it's about a year, and they'll be almost an inch in size.
How long is it before they start to filter the water?
Well, immediately, as soon as they hit the tank.
So how much water can an oyster filter?
Well, an adult oyster this size can filter out about 50 gallons of water per day.
An oyster that size can filter 50 gallons of water?
Sure can.
Wow, that's a lot of water. Have oysters always filtered that much?
Yes, in fact, 300 years ago, they could filter the entire volume of the bay in 2 to 3 days. Now it takes them about a year. That's why this program is so vital for the Chesapeake Bay and for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to be a big part of it.
What caused the decline in the amount of oysters?
Well, over the period of the last 300 years, harvest has really hit them hard. Too many oysters out of the bay and not enough shell and substrate left back in the bay.
Hey, look what I found. The bag of shells that we made earlier. I think it should go in the tank.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Great idea. I'll give you a hand.
Okay.
Nice throw.
So what have we learned so far?
I've learned so far that our recycled oyster shells can actually help save the bay.
And setting tanks are super important to restoring oysters in the bay.
And 1 oyster can filter 50 gallons of water.
And oysters can even change genders.
Aw, shucks. We've got to go to a break, but we'll be right back with more from Aqua Kids. Welcome back to Aqua Kids. Did you know that oysters are a farm animal too? We're going to ask Stan to tell us a little bit more. Hi, Stan. Hey, guys.
Hey. So we were just talking about which one was the male and which one is the female here, and we really can't tell by looking at the outside of the shell. You think you can. So you said you thought this was a female, is that correct?
No. This one's female, this one's male.
Okay,
I was
then
right about these two.
We will sacrifice the oyster in order to determine whether that's true. So in order to get it open, you notice I just popped up its hinge. This is the hinge area here. And I'm gently going to pry that up and slice its adductor muscle so that I can get the whole shell off. And if you see, this is the inside of an oyster. This is a little visitor called a pea crab. They often co-inhabit the oyster. They really don't cause much of a problem for the oyster.
Are they helpful?
No, they're commensal, meaning they live there and they don't really exact much of a cost on the oyster, except sometimes reproduction. And in this case, this oyster isn't particularly reproductive, and the reason you can tell is it doesn't, see that creamy area in there? that is where it would normally produce sperm or eggs, gametes, and yet you really can't see. And in order to show you, I'll have to show you one I opened earlier, where it's starkly different. This is one that has a lot of that creamy area. It just overtook the whole body, basically. And this, as you guessed earlier, I don't know how, is in fact a female. And it has probably 5 or 7 million eggs, all contained within this body area.
5 to 7 million eggs? That's a lot of eggs.
It's a lot, but this animal is relatively small, and some larger oysters can have 20 to 50 million eggs. And you know why they have so many? Because, well, it allows broadcast spawning, but the problem with broadcast spawning is you're spinning a roulette wheel on your likelihood of survival. And the survival of embryos, once they're become larvae in the water, is very, very, very low. So in order to have replace themselves, they need to have very high fecundity, as it's called. So 20, 30 million eggs is needed in order for enough larvae to survive that whole process, end up settled in the right place, and reproduce again. And it's a typical strategy for organisms that don't have really high survival in the early stages. Plants, for example, they have lots and lots of seed, but not very many of those seeds naturally will actually take, you know.
We've just talked about the reproductive cycle. Let's find out what happens after they're born. Hey, Stan.
Hey.
Can you show us what happens after we've made these chromosomal crosses and the oyster is now born?
That's right. Born would be at the end of its larval cycle. And when it reaches the end of its larval cycle at a very small 1/3 of a millimeter size, it has to attach to continue on its life cycle. So our goal is to try to have nice, perfect single oysters to put out on the farm so they'll be easy to measure. Normally, oysters set as a group onto whatever culture is available. This is just an example of oysters that are set all over this shell. And this is not a good way to grow them in order to evaluate them later, because some are crowding others out. We want them single individual oysters. So they say you can't fool Mother Nature, but we can. And we can use these little tiny pieces of shell, no bigger than sand, really. And that'll be 25 cents, please. And so an oyster larvae, which are tiny, remember, will set on one of these little chips, and another one will set on another little chip.
So what do they look like when they start growing?
Baby oysters. And we have some over here.
Great.
So these are baby oysters that have been allowed to set on that little piece of shell, and then afterward we've been feeding them with artificial food that we grow for about a week and a half, okay? And you can see that they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters. You can see each little baby oyster there?
They're very tiny.
They're very tiny, but they eat a lot. And when they get to be about this size, if we have our system filled, we just can't grow enough food to feed them. So we need to get them outside where they can eat use raw water to filter food rather than grow it for them. So this stage is about the stage that we move it out to what's called upwellers, because this is a downweller. What it means is the water is coming from around the tank and being bubbled up into the screen, and the net flow of water is downward. And this is the process you use when you first set them, so that the larvae can comfortably settle on a shell, set there, and then we can feed them by putting food into this here.
Our numbers as surfers are now big enough that we can create real change. If you're able to mobilize a bunch of surfers, you can change the world. My name is Kyle Tierman, and I started the movie series Surfing for Change. I grew up in Santa Cruz, California. Santa Cruz is a small beach town. You know, they always say that, you know, the world votes one way and Santa Cruz always votes another way. All my friends surf and skate, and that's what I grew up doing. Surfing for Change is a free online movie series that I created where I travel to a surf spot somewhere around the world and cover a social or environmental issue happening in that town. But I recycle my plastic bag, so where does that go? And then I connect it back to my hometown of Santa Cruz to help make people aware of the simple daily things they can do in their own community to help make the world a better place. I'm gonna start bringing my own bottle to the skate park, and next time I get a burrito, I'm bringing my own bag. Our world is so interconnected that what you do at home has a big effect on the world. So let's make the right decisions that are gonna help the world. The first project I did, I found a coal plant that was being proposed down in this fishing village in Chile. All the locals were against it. And I found that Bank of America was funding this coal plant. So I made a movie encouraging surfers to take their money out of Bank of America. Right now, I'm at the site of the proposed coal power plant. If you have your money in a local bank, it's lent out within your community. And since then, I've documented over $340 million being moved out of Bank of America into local banks around the country. I got an email from Bank of America. They don't really like me very much. The goal of each of my movies is that when you stand up after watching it, you will actually change a simple thing in your life that will then have a big systemic effect on the world. It's cool, you know, I've had surfers who I would never dream of thinking were interested in the environment or in these kinds of issues, and they'll paddle up to me and like, hey, that was cool. Like, I saw your movie and, you know, I moved my money into a local bank. The truth is that surfing is a multi-billion-dollar industry right now. And if surfers change, they're enough that you can change the world. If I could say one thing to the world, it's that you have a lot more power than you think you do. And that changing the world can be as simple as shifting a daily decision.
Wasn't that amazing? Okay, now it's your turn. If you or someone you know is doing something remarkable to help our planet, let us know about it, and you could be our next eco-defender. I gotta go.
Aqua Kids will be right back.
Hey, it's Drew. Join the Aqua Kids next week to see the similarities between human and shark physiology. It's gonna be pretty sweet.
I'm Jalen, and this is Earth Edition. Even if you've never seen or eaten an oyster, you know that there are many reasons why oysters and oyster reefs should matter. Reefs provide food and a home for birds and marine life. Oysters naturally filter impurities from the water, and harvesting oysters for human consumption supports the local economy. But oysters and oyster reefs are in peril. 85% of all oyster reefs have been lost across the world. Overharvesting, pollution, disease, and degraded habitat are causing a decline in the health of the coastal ecosystems. But there's help through programs like the Oyster Restoration Program on the Chesapeake Bay and through the Nature Conservancy. Over 100 public and private partners in the U.S. are using innovative scientific techniques to help restore the reefs and increase the population of oysters. I'm Jalen, and this is Earth Edition.
Welcome back to Aqua Kids. So we've heard about eating oysters, but what do oysters eat? Stan, can you tell us what oysters eat?
Welcome to the hatchery kitchen. This is where we cook their food, although we don't use heat. You can tell it's cool in here. That's because the algae needs to be maintained at a lower temperature. It doesn't, in order to maintain their purity, we need them to be at a steady temperature, not like the hatchery floor where it goes up and down. But we basically have the meat, potatoes, and vegetables for larval eating. And the different species vary in size, so that the smaller sized algae species are fed to the oyster first because that's when it's its tiniest. And then we gradually add another species which gives it, say, the vegetable component of its diet. And when it gets to about halfway through its larval cycle, we add in a final species.
So even though oysters are so different than humans, they still need the same basic essential nutrients?
Absolutely, because the cellular processes in animals are shared across all kinds of phyla. So they essentially need the building blocks of making proteins just like we do. And it's just that they're delivered in, well, like I say, the meat, potato, and vegetables of the algae world here.
Okay, so what did we learn about oysters?
Well, oysters here at the hatchery eat many different types of single-celled algal organisms.
To farm oysters, you select the best of the best.
Then, the best of the best go to the farms.
Remember, it's up to you to keep it green and blue. Help protect our planet. And we'll see you next time on Aqua Kids. Bye!
Through innovative research, education, and stewardship, the Chesapeake Bay Research Reserve and the Virginia Institute of Marine Science is helping support those making difficult decisions supporting our coastal communities and natural resources. As a partner, Aqua Kids plays an important role by increasing public awareness and energizing the next generation of scientists, policymakers, resource managers, and concerned citizens. So let's all join the Aqua Kids and keep the planet green and blue and carry on the mission of preserving and protecting our coastal environment.
Aqua Kids, doing what we have to do. Saving our earth, land, air, and sea. All we gotta do is keep it green and blue.